Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we've got a series of storms that are going to be developing over the next couple of days that will be bringing all three modes of severe storms. So we're going to be breaking down the details for you in this update and take a look at the overall water vapor imagery this morning. We've got a complex of storms that's originating towards the Minneapolis region. These are going to be diving east southeastward today. Further to the south, there's an extensive amount of heat that's still going to be building across a good part of the country. We do have a little bit of a tropical wave that's going to be impacting portions of the Bahamas. That'll be shifting into Florida, bringing added into those rain showers and storm opportunities for them. But further to the north, we'll have to be on the lookout for these storms today, because this morning you can see on the storm reports they've already produced 50 and 60 mile per hour wind gusts within these zones and produced some damaging hail. Some quarter size, even up to golf ball size, has been reported with these supercell thunderstorms. That is moving through towards the Minneapolis region this morning, and that is diving into portions of Wisconsin there, down into Madison. There's the warm front further to the south. That's the warm front that's going to be lifting a little bit further off, further north today. And as these storms are going to be traversing along this boundary, bringing all three modes of severe storm. So later on this afternoon, in fact, they do have an upgraded, enhanced risk for severe storms in this zone. So by the time we head into the Chicago region, into the Grand Rapids region, back into Detroit, into Cleveland, yes, we are talking about some damaging winds, some larger hail associated with it, and including even some isolated tornado threat within this same sector. So definitely be on high alert. I think it all gets going kind of later on this afternoon. I think right around peak heating of the afternoon, probably around 4 o'clock. So let's really time these out for you and take a look at the latest update on the composite reflectivity radar. You can actually see we've got these supercell thunderstorms in and around the Milwaukee region around 4 o'clock this afternoon. So you can see some of these whites impacting these areas. That could be some hail within these little supercells, some damaging winds, likely some 65 mile per hour winds with these. Can't even roll out some isolated 70 mile per hour wind gusts, as these supercells will be racing across through portions of Grand Rapids and portions of Mount Pleasant here down into Lansing. These will continue impacting towards the Detroit region, likely around 6-7 o'clock tonight. And then further into the overnight time frame, by the time we get it towards your midnight time frame, they should be somewhere near the Fort Wayne vicinity, back into the Bowling Green, into Toledo, into portions of Cleveland. Not likely as intense, but still a pretty nasty squall line that be coming through with a damaging wind threat and some isolated larger hail associated with it. So it's going to be a higher impact evening from the 4 o'clock to say the midnight time frame, as these storms will be moving across east southeastward. But yes, further to the south, there's a lot of heat to contend with, folks. So we've got excessive heat warning still for the desert southwest, and then in much of the middle of the country, including good part of North Texas and Oklahoma, and this goes all the way into the northern periphery of Iowa, even along the East Coast, waiting for those storms that really will impact your area on Thursday. Add ahead of it, you got a lot of heat to contend with heat advisories and then some very rare excessive heat watches within this zone. Those heat indices could approach the 110 variety up there. So that is going to be really muggy like conditions, but you can see where actually this stops. So you got a lot of fuel to fuel these thunderstorms, and these will be traversing across this northern periphery of the boundary. And by the time we head into Thursday, there's that supercell setup. We'll be literally originating towards the midnight time frame into the early morning time frame on Thursday. We'll be in towards the Pennsylvania region, into upstate New York. Then it will continue to shift off to the east southeastward, and that's why the Storm Prediction Center, out ahead of those excessive, those heat advisories, puts the storm place in around these zones. So again, these storms are going to have a lot of heat to contend with before these get to your area. That's why the Storm Prediction Center does in fact include that slight risk for portions of Washington, D.C., into Baltimore, back into Philly, into New York City, into Hartford, all the way up to here to Concord. Even includes the Portland, Maine region, as these will extend into Boston and Providence through the afternoon time frame on Thursday. So there's the setup about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, what the radar could potentially look like within this zone, impacting portions of southern Maine here, going into portions of towards the region of Massachusetts zones and back into the Boston region. Some of those isolated supercells could impact the New York City area as this will continue to move across. So over the breakdown for the next 2 days, so you can see we got a lot of dry air, not much happening out west. Obviously, not much happening across the central regions. They're just dealing with a lot of heat and a lot of clear skies, and just they're waiting for the next rain opportunity. But it's going to be a long time away, because really this whole area over the next couple of days is really going to be highlighted over these same general areas. We do have a kind of a backdoor trough that's going to be impacting portions of Canada that slowly sinks southward. But out ahead of it, we've got these convective complexes, these mesoscale convective systems that are going to be blowing up across these regions and traveling east-southeastward. Further south, there's that tropical wave. So the tropical wave will slowly, enter portions of Florida, adding to those rain opportunities for them. And this will continue to move across into the Gulf of Mexico. So heading into Friday, yes, we have another convective complex, these mesoscale convective systems blowing up on the northern periphery of this ridge. So the ridge really doesn't go anywhere. You still got the tropical wave down here in Florida, but we have another mesoscale complex form in portions of Iowa, back into these same areas, into Wisconsin, back into Michigan again. And yet we have another slight risk. And in fact, this will probably be upgraded to an enhanced risk heading into tomorrow. So this is the same kind of general area we have to be concerned about for more damaging winds and some more larger hail, and even likely a tornadic threat as we get into closer into your Friday time frame. So if you live in the Sioux Falls area, back into Minneapolis again, through the Milwaukee region again, back into Des Moines, into the Chicago region, these will continue moving into the Grand Rapids, back into Cleveland again, and eventually heading towards the Pittsburgh region, as we get deeper into Friday night time frame. But the EH highs are hitting pretty high in this particular event. So I think that's why we are going to be seeing an enhanced risk upgrade, and likely a tornado threat within near the Chicago region as we get closer into the Friday timeframe. So we'll definitely be fine-tuning this event on tomorrow's update. But yes, definitely be on high alert, as we've got, today, tomorrow, and Thursday with this same, today, tomorrow, and Friday on this same general vicinity of storm development over the next couple of days. So it's all complements of this backdoor trough, right? So we've got some cooler air that's going to be filtering down from Canada, and just on the northern periphery of this ridge, that's where the atmosphere is going to be overturning and just kind of elongating along this boundary further south. That's where all the heat is, right? So you got underneath all that sinking air, that's where all the heat advisories are. And that, I think that will just continue into the weekend and even into early next week, because yes, there's the rain opportunities for Saturday. Even though maybe the storm probabilities might go down a little bit as far as the severe storms, you're still going to get rain out of this deal in a good part of Illinois, into Indiana, back into Ohio, going into the mid-Atlantic regions, and getting back into the Northeast again. Florida stays wet with the tropical wave going to be impacting their area, but everybody else stays dry, right? It really doesn't change. And there's the temperatures going into Sunday, right? So you got the coolness coming down, not cold, but definitely cooler. We're looking at 70s, right? So 70s up here into Wisconsin, into Michigan, up here into portions of Maine. Very actually comfortable like conditions, as this coolness will be filtering further south. It will try to push in against this ridge, but all that does is heat up this atmosphere with compressional heating even a little bit higher going into the weekend. So now we might be looking at the middle 100s across a good part of North Texas and portions of Oklahoma. Only the good thing is, if there's any relief in sight for the Phoenix region, we do have this little tropical trough that moves through Florida, goes through the Gulf of Mexico. Not much rain associated with it, but it's going to be enough. It's going to be enough to probably pull down the temperatures below that 110 barrier where you've been stuck at for several weeks. I think this is like day 26 in a row. So you might not hit 30 days, but it's going to be really close because the temperature likely will be below 110 on going into your Sunday, likely probably Monday timeframe too. There's that little tropical trough. It's called a little tropical trough. There's not much rain associated with it, but it's enough instability. It brings enough cloud cover and enough overlay in that atmosphere to mix down that, those somewhat cooler air. So you're going to be likely going to be breaking the streak into the Phoenix region by that time frame. But there's that backdoor trough up here in the Northeast. So I showed you some of the temperatures back into Maine. They actually even get a little bit of cooler. So you might be in the low 70s for highs back then, upper 40s for lows. So that's going to be feeling really nice and definitely cool up there in portions of Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. And that same areas, it'll just be compressional heating in the middle of the country, and that the rain opportunities to end the month of July are kind of be few and far between, with really the ridge going to be dominating most of the country. The only exception is these little tropical waves down here in Florida, right? So you still get a lot of heat. It's just to be in terms of higher temperatures, and the heat index has just been really off the chart with these record sea surface anomalies down here into South Florida. So you can actually see there's a lot of water content, right? So if you got dew points in the 80s down those regions, obviously it doesn't take much to wring out the atmosphere, because obviously the atmosphere is very, very moist underneath that. And we try to get the monsoon to get going in the desert Southwest, but it really doesn't take further north. It just, these systems continue to move off to the west. So, but going into next week, there's the ridge, folks. So the ridge basically parks itself over the middle of the country. So it's not going to be highlighted over the desert Southwest. That's why you might creep below the 110 variety up there in Phoenix. But it's really going to be parked across the southern plains, right? It's going to be parked across a good part of the Southeast. So this is where all the higher temperatures, the highest temperature anomalies will be. And then, of course, the backdoor trough up there into portions of New England. And it just gets even deeper into your Friday, going into, say, August the 4th time frame. So the main vicinity of the most sinking air is going to be really highlighted over North Texas, East Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. This is where, and across these regions where all the red shaded area, that's where all the heat and the most excessive, heat warnings, heat advisories, all that you've been continuing with just continues to roll on. That's exactly what the Climate Prediction Center basically has in place, where the ensembles are hinting at where the ridge is going to be. That's the highest probability to see those well above average temperatures. And where that backdoor trough is going to be up here in New England, that's where the highest probability of well below average temperatures are going to be. And that's likely in topping out in the low 70s, very nice, comfortable conditions, likely topping out in the upper 40s and low 50s for lows up here into this region. Notice it's not as intense as the heat still for the desert Southwest. Still going to be plenty hot, probably still be triple digits, but you won't be the 118. You're not going to be the 115. You'll be probably closer to the 105, 107, that type of variety back into Vegas and these areas. And beyond that, going into the first week of August, it's not as intense. The high it's still hot, but it's not like all, more record levels. It's not as intense, right? So it's still going to be hot, and you're still going to have that backdoor trough, still the same type of pattern, but it's probably not going to be as intense heat, especially as we get toward the end of the first week of August. But what it is going to allow to do is going to allow more of a northwest flow to kind of set up further northwest and then diving east southeast. So the probability of seeing above average rains by that time going into that deeper into that first week of August is much higher, going into Idaho, going into Montana, back into Wyoming. Those will continue down into portions of Colorado, getting into Kansas, and entering portions of, maybe the Texas Panhandle by that time frame. And then of course weakening as you get closer and closer to this ridge. That'll be weakening towards those regions. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.